Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Herrin, Government Relations Manager of Health Policy at the Heartland Institute. And today we have a special guest, Alex Clark, CEO of CASAA, to talk with us a little bit about vaping, tobacco harm reduction, and some FDA campaigns. So, Alex, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, for sure. I know that we've had other staff members that have talked to you in the past, and there's been a lot of policy changes made regarding vaping. But just in general, for the folks out there that have not heard of your organization, can you give us an overview of your mission and the purpose of your organization?
Sure. Well, we are the Consumer Advocates for Smoke-Free Alternatives Association, or CASAA, if you don't feel like saying the whole thing. We were actually, part of our mission traces all the way back to why we got started. The organization was formed in 2009 in response to FDA taking enforcement action against a couple of manufacturers by seizing their products that were coming in from abroad. And people were very, very concerned that we weren't going to be able to get these products anymore. There was no domestic manufacturing of hardware. And so, all of the hardware was coming in from China mainly. And so it was necessary for consumers to kind of band together and create an organization to make sure that our voices were heard. And on top of that, this conversation has been dominated by this narrative of profit versus public health. And we see that playing out time and again with how legislatures or city councils are dealing with this issue. And so again, it was very necessary for the main stakeholders in all of this, the consumers, to have a voice. And so, our mission is to engage all of the people who are affected by regulations affecting their access to safer nicotine products, and to promote these products in a truthful and helpful way, so that people who smoke can make the switch.
Yeah, I think that you guys have an amazing mission, and it's definitely an uphill battle, regardless of who's in power in the administration. It seems like everyone's attacking, people who use e-cigarettes and vape, and unfortunately, I think there's a lot of untruths or misguided information out there. So I did also want to ask you regarding the new FDA announcement last week that the FDA has a campaign now planning to ban menthol flavors and more traditional cigarettes and cigars. Do you have any thoughts on that, or?
Yes. I think we have some pretty complicated thoughts. I have not kind of boiled everything down into a post that we'll be putting up on our site about this, but it's kind of strange for us. Like I said, our mission is all about making sure that people have access to and awareness of safer alternatives to smoking. So historically, we've sort of stayed away from taking a position on regulations or laws that affect combustible tobacco. But in the scheme of things, when we boil this down, it really is it's an overly coercive policy, and it doesn't just ban menthol cigarettes. It bans flavors in cigars and other tobacco products, or combustible tobacco products, and we've already seen some research about this. The result here is that most people continue smoking. That has sort of been the outcome of a lot of other policies that we've seen, whether we're talking about extra taxes or flavor bans. People either return to smoking, or they find these products on an underground market, or they simply go to the next state. So we would rather see something more in line with what Scott Gottlieb sort of proposed in 2017, which was making sure that there are safer alternatives available for people to transition to. So under that scenario, menthol might go away in cigarettes, but there's still menthol vapor products. There's still mint or wintergreen smokeless tobacco products, or the nicotine pouches that are popular. IQOS, for example, a heat not burn product, received a modified, it's actually a modified exposure, but modified risk order from FDA for their mint and menthol heat sticks. For people who don't understand or don't know what that means, being granted a modified risk order means that you can market your products as having this, low risk or modified risk characteristic. In IQOS's case, it's modified exposure. And that means that marketing your products in that way is, as the FDA would say it, as it's, I believe, written in the statute, appropriate for the protection of public health. And so, a blanket ban of menthol in a product like IQOS would kind of be counter to this movement towards helping people discover safer alternatives. So it's really not as simple as coming out and saying we're against it or we're for it or we don't care. I think it's really important to kind of weigh all the consequences here, and not least among them is this social justice issue of you're basically pressuring people into an illegal marketplace where their risk is probably exponentially higher. We're talking about, there's no protection from counterfeit products. There's no protection from getting ripped off. Anybody who's bought pot pre-legalization understands you're taking on quite a bit of risk as a customer buying from somebody you don't really know that well, who either shows up in a car or you're buying in an alley somewhere, or even sitting in their living room. You have no protections for that. So, there are a lot of other problems that a ban on menthol creates, and to achieve something like getting 20% of people to quit smoking, who smoke menthol cigarettes, it's our position that there is a much more efficient and effective way to do that, and it's all about meeting people where they're at, not just implementing strict regulations or rules for their own good.
Right. Well, I completely agree with that. And just in terms of looking at, vaping or e-cigarettes, or just in general, the umbrella of alternatives, to traditional smoking, what do you see any, any attacks on that? I know you do, but what attacks are there on, on vaping products these days that we need to kind of be aware of as well?
Probably they are numerous, but probably the one that has gotten the most attention is flavor bans. I live in New York State. Flavors were banned last year as part of the budget process. New York's budget bill is notorious for having lots of potentially controversial pieces of legislation shoved into it. The flavor ban that happened here was also sort of in response to the lung injuries that were the result of illicit THC cartridges. And several states have done the same. Massachusetts, of course, banned flavors, I believe menthol was included in that as well.
They were in Illinois. We've got a bill too. So.
Yeah, Illinois is doing all kinds of fun things. And California, there's just been half a dozen or more states that have either proposed or implemented flavor bans over the past year. And the result of that, of course, is we lose access to these products. Flavors are very, maybe, I don't know if we need to kind of backtrack and set the table here for why flavored products are important. We've been hearing from our members, from our friends who use these products. It's been my own experience that using a flavored vapor product, something that I prefer kind of in the real world as a food or beverage, desserts and fruit and stuff like that. The further those flavors are away from combustible tobacco, it puts some distance between me and the next cigarette. And that's very important for people who are transitioning or trying to quit smoking or whatever. It's very important to have that kind of safety buffer. So finding a flavor that we like normally and being able to consume nicotine with that flavor is very, very helpful. And I think as we go forward and we see more research about this, we may get a much more clear picture about the role that flavors play. So, standing up and fighting back against these bans that are sort of sold under this narrative that they only exist in nicotine and tobacco products to lure kids into addiction. That is simply not true.
Right.
It was consumers. It was people who were not satisfied with the products that were supposed to kind of taste like tobacco, but they really didn't, and they weren't satisfying. And so people just started making flavors at home. And some of those people, very talented and driven and very passionate about these products, turned that into a business. And so that's why the flavors exist, because we put them there and we demanded them. So yeah, flavor bans are a big deal. Certainly, Congress may be taking up a bill again this year. Frank Pallone from New Jersey, his bill passed the House last year, and it would have directed FDA to, within 2 years, promulgate a rule banning flavors. We expect to see something like that, at least within the the coming 3.5 years. Flavor bans are big. The next one down is going to be taxation. Congress is already there is a bill. There have been a few attempts to establish this kind of equivalency. One bottle or one cartridge equals X number of cigarettes or pack of cigarettes or whatever. So my first exposure to this was in New Jersey. In 2014, I believe, Governor Chris Christie at the time had proposed tax parity between cigarettes and e-cigarettes. But in the 7 years since then, no one has actually come up with a formula. And as the U.S. Postal Service noted in their proposed rule to ban shipping of vapor products, that this measurement just doesn't exist. That's very concerning, because that's an easy number to get wrong. And generally speaking, extra taxes on these products are ultimately harmful. We've seen a couple pieces of research come out about this. Most recently, a study looking at the sort of pre and post taxation in Massachusetts. And of course, they found they're consistent with the market data that we've seen. People just went across state lines or went back to smoking. And it really didn't help the situation at all. So those are really the two big ones that we're following. Another one that is sort of more strategic than anything. I'll probably dial that back a little bit. It is certainly strategic, but preemption is a big issue right now. One of the things that we know has been going on for years is the anti-tobacco activists. They sort of pick their targets at the local level, whether that's major metropolitans or cities with 5,000 people in it. It's easier to persuade a city council of 5 people or 10 people or whatever than it is to go to your state legislature with more than 100 people representing everyone in the state, and those local fights can kind of be steamrolled. There's oftentimes not a lot of resistance. Notification is spotty. City councils, they're only obligated to reach out to license holders sometimes. So the public is usually the last to find out, sometimes within 24 hours of a hearing. And so they've been able to do that with relative ease. And so by enacting a preemption that would reserve making tobacco regulations at the state level, it can slow down that march of really bad policy, which includes taxation and flavor bans, also place bans, and some very strict rules about who can sell, where they can sell them, and even how these products are stored. Those are kind of the top 3 right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned the flavor bans and the excise taxes. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, or, I think that the louder the people are, and they're often the most misinformed. And I think a lot of it, this misinformation, maybe the intent is good. We want to save the children. And, those types of narratives are really hard to fight when you're using logic, because they're definitely using that emotional pull on people. But the research just is not there. And I think that's just so important to note that there is no research that shows that, flavored e-cigarettes increases, the youth vaping or any such thing. And so I think I think, do you have any thoughts for advocates that are pro-freedom, when they're talking to their legislators or just talking to their friends and family, or any other good, resources for them to use other than your website, of course, to have that research kind of at hand? Because I think it's important if you can kind of pull out and say, well, that's not true, and here's some information why, because we definitely like to put that information in our research and commentaries when we send to legislators. So do you have any thoughts on that to kind of combat this false narrative that has been, going around?
Sure. Well, online there's tons of resources. I'll start with Twitter. I mean, there's some really great folks engaged in this fight for many, many years. I mean, even before vaping was a thing. Probably one of the earliest people who I think risked his career on this is Dr. Brad Radu, who I believe was with Heartland for a little while. So he originally started with smokeless tobacco, encouraging people who smoke to switch to smokeless. He's written a book about it, and he maintains an excellent blog that is up to date with the research and of course his commentary and his work in this space. He is, I believe, an oral pathologist by training. So he does have some medical background, some research background in all of this. And I always highly recommend Brad Radu. Carl Phillips is another person to follow on Twitter, and Anti-THR Lies is his blog, for a little thicker read if people are interested in that. Clive Bates from the UK, former ASH UK director, I believe, has been very outspoken about promoting safer nicotine products, and often has some very informed takes on good and bad research that comes out. And it seems like there's some other researchers that are coming out, and maybe they're able to make a career out of promoting a more sensible way to reduce smoking and the early death and disease. Mike Pesco, I believe, from University of Georgia. Forgive me if I've got the school wrong, but he's done a lot of good work recently, and I always recommend him for people to follow. And then, website-wise, I know that there were some individuals that got together and put together the Safer Nicotine Wiki, which has been an ongoing project for probably a couple of months now, maybe 2 or 3. And so that it's a wiki, and so as you would expect, it's kind of a reference source. And these are folks who have been engaged in this battle for many years themselves. But mostly on the sort of consumer side of things, and so they've collected a lot of good research for people to reference. And again, on our own website, we have some small number of studies and other bits of information that we've vetted ourselves, and I believe you can find that under our resources tab. We have a new website, so I can't navigate by memory just yet, but it is on there. And I always encourage people to check out our testimonials project. We've been collecting consumer testimonials since, I believe, 2011. We have over 13,000 right now. It's something I really wish someone would maybe research. And I know that we've found some common themes among a lot of the testimonials, but these are all from predominantly people who switched to vaping from smoking, like me. I was a 2-pack a day smoker for 21 years. Wow. And to me, it was, I quit accidentally by switching to vaping. And I know I'm not alone. I know there's thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of people out there just like me. And so I encourage people to browse through the testimonials and, of course, submit your own.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think personal anecdotes go a long ways too when you're trying to, change policy, look at changing hearts and minds is what I like to say. So I think definitely using personal stories is important.
Yeah. I just to add one more thing, that's really what I intended to start with, is that, our personal experiences with switching is very important, whether you're a business owner or an individual consumer. I think some of the most compelling stories are folks who I've met, people who were given a certain amount of time to live, and their doctor said, you have to quit smoking in order to get this life-saving surgery. And after decades of smoking, I think a lot of people probably sit in that position and just think, okay, I'm dead. But I've definitely spoken to several people who were able to use vapor products and then get the surgery, and they're still alive. So it really is amazing just how much our health can improve by quitting smoking. And switching to a smoke-free product is absolutely a valid way of doing that.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree, and I really appreciate your insight and the work that your organization's doing. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners, regarding tobacco harm reduction or policy or, anything on the top of your head that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, well, generally speaking, it's nothing earth-shattering to say. We believe that the smoke-free alternatives really are the best way out of this. I think credit where credit's due. The kind of coercive policies of the past. I understand that it's kind of the tools that people had in their toolbox, but we've grown up, we've evolved.
Yeah.
We now have more options at our disposal, and this really is something that this industry didn't really come out of any big policy initiative. It was just individuals trying to find a better way to quit smoking and live longer and live healthier. I think it's really important for people to understand that and understand that this is not, the tobacco companies of today aren't necessarily the tobacco companies of 1980 or 1990. Things have changed, and this entire the independent side of the industry, and even some of the closed system products that you see are it is all consumer driven. This industry was born on message boards and kitchen tables and chats on Facebook and all of that. So I think it's really important going forward to preserve that and make sure that the people who have been most affected by smoking have a bit of a leg up to kind of take their life back. If that means opening up a small business, I think they should have that. The barrier to entry needs to be a little bit lower than paying millions of dollars to get a product through FDA. I just sort of offer that as an additional point and hopefully some insights and encouragement for people. But other than that, is this the part where I promote our social media channels and other ways to follow and get in touch with CASAA?
Yeah, I was going to say thank you so much for joining us today. And if you do have, any ways that our listeners can just stay up to date with the amazing work that you all are doing, if you want to go ahead and, let them know where to follow you at, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so we are at CASAA Media on Twitter, CASAA Media. That is probably our most active social media channel. Kristen Noel Marsh manages that for us. She's formerly board of directors and now is working for us part-time. And we're also on Instagram, same handle, at CASAA Media. And of course, check out our website at CASAA.org, CASAA.org, and join. Membership is free, and we don't spam inboxes. So yeah, exactly. So it's it's a resource that we've been building over 12 years now. Is that right? It's been 12 years. So it's a resource we've been building over 12 years for the community, for anybody who's interested in learning more about the products and the policy issues that we're facing. So yeah, CASAA.org, at CASAA Media. We're also on Facebook. We have 50 state pages for people to get engaged with your neighbors, and we post things specific to your state as it comes up, whether they're local issues or state issues. It's a way that hopefully we're getting people together so they can talk about things and issues specific to their state. So if all of that is not your speed, you can definitely send us an email at takeaction@casaa.org. Myself and a couple other people get that. So those are probably all the best ways to get in touch with us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your insight. And I really appreciate you talking with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for watching this video. please subscribe to our channel and consider donating to the Heartland Institute to support more vibrant free markets, greater individual liberties, and more videos like this one.